Greetings and a warm welcome to the HirePro podcast Momentum, strategies that make hiring fearless. I'm your host, Squadron Leader Delshad Master, and joining us today is a very special guest, the Chief Operating Officer at HirePro, Mr. S. Pasupathi. Mr. Pasupathi is a distinguished expert in talent acquisition, recruitment automation, and college hiring. Today, we interview Mr. S. Pasupathi in our inaugural episode and learn from him about the emerging trends in college hiring in 2024. Welcome, Pashu. Let's start with the first question. So, since we're speaking about college hiring, if you could tell us a little about, firstly, the significance of college hiring, and when did HirePro enter the game, and how have you seen trends evolve in college hiring?
So if you look at college hiring, traditionally over the last 20, 30 years and even earlier than that, has primarily been the entry level, I would say, start of somebody's career. That is more from a candidate's perspective. Yeah. From an organization perspective, that is the place where you get fresh, raw talent with a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. You can mold the talent basis the need that would be there. And then, of course, in some of the, I would say, larger sector, it is also to manage the cost pyramid. Because you get fresh talent, you train them and put them deployment into projects, and that's how it has been. And I would say that most of the organizations have figured out, over the last few years, that entry-level talent, college hire talent, if you're able to get the right talent and you're able to engage them, they actually grow on to become the leaders of the organizations. There are multiple success stories of people who've joined as a fresher and probably ending up as a CEO of the organization as well. Right. So that's the significance of college hiring. Now, we as an organization started off college hiring way back in 2003, 2004. That was a time when most of the organizations did not really have a very evolved strategy of college hiring. Right. Because college hiring always used to happen sometime in March, April. That's when they would get headcounts. Right. And whereas the college hiring season would start off in June, July. Right. So the whole idea was when should we plan, which are the colleges that we could really go about hiring. Okay. And that was also the time where some of the large, I would say, multinationals who had their GCCs in India, or even the some of the mid caps, when they were starting to hire, they needed a support for going about college hiring. Right. And since most of the, I would say, the founders and the initial set of members came from some of these tier 1 campuses, they had those connects, they had a very good understanding of how to go about doing college hiring. Right. So I would say the first element that we built was actually consulting. Okay. To help organizations to figure out, to map talent versus the colleges they would like to go. Right. Then things evolved like assessments and then our ability to kind of really conduct these events on the ground. Right. So that's how it has kind of evolved for us from a timeline perspective. Right. From a service, if you look at, as I said initially, it was largely around consulting. Correct. In those days, assessment was not really a differentiator, to be honest. Right. Because even the large IT services would look for more of potential. So people would rely on an aptitude test and basic English communication to go about doing hiring. Right. But I would say over the years, assessments got really specialized, especially in the tech world. Mm-hmm. People moved away from very generic aptitude test to say specific questions on tech, and then little more super specialization when you look at companies like a semiconductor organization or some of the core engineering organizations, they would look for those specialized assessments. And since HirePro really understood the talent, it also understood the overall hiring needs. Yeah. Correct. So as a result, we are able to kind of build the right kind of assessments that were there. Sure. Obviously, from an evolution standpoint, it used to be a paper and pencil test way back in 2005, 2006. Correct. And then the platform came into play. I would say the game changer for us was the fact that since we understood the entire business, we did assessments for a very, very long time. We understood the nuances of the process that happens during college hiring, the various stages, how to get in these things. And that's what really helped us to build this platform that we have today, which is leveraged by close to 100 to 200 organizations to manage not just their college hiring, but I would say large parts of their entry level hiring and large volume hiring that happens,
Right.
where they can seamlessly, I mean, today it's like a college ATS for most of these organizations.
Right.
Where they can manage the entire workflow of, reaching out to colleges, branding themselves, doing the assessments, interviewing, offer, onboard, keep in touch, and even running some of their training programs. And with this entire trend during the COVID years, where organizations are not really able to travel to colleges, I mean, that's when this platform adoption, really went up high.
Right.
So, I mean, that's how the story has been for, I would say, the last 15, 16 years for us.
Right. So the pandemic itself was a major game changer. And the pandemic led to a lot of changes even in the hiring scenario. So what do you think, how has college hiring been affected pre and post-COVID?
Sure. I'll probably answer this both in the context of college hiring as well as what the world knows as off-campus hiring. Because if you look at, there are certain sectors where college hiring per se does not exist. They typically look for people once they have graduated from the college,
Right.
or anything in the 0 to 6 months, 1 year kind of a category, because the characteristics are the same. You look for some basic skills assessments, large volume, numbers to be met, and so on and so forth. So the first thing that hit the organizations in July 2020 was that how do you really go about doing college hiring, because they could not travel. Because college hiring, I would say, it is a big ritual in a lot of organizations,
Right.
where a hiring manager would kind of aspire to go back to their
Alumni,
alma matter,
alma mater.
or sometimes use that as a pretext to go to their hometown and kind of do this. And so the entire world came to a standstill. So you had to do all of this remote.
Right.
Next came was, how do I do assessments where you kind of really can do proctoring?
Right.
And then how do you ensure the same individual who comes for assessments comes for interviews? And in the past, when you used to do these drives, the candidate, hiring manager, and recruiter were in the same position.
Right.
So if you do the first round, quickly move to the second round, do the second round, HR round, and so on. Now, this was not really possible to kind of run this in a remote manner. So every organization needed a platform where they could do all of this seamlessly, where the recruiter could kind of, see what is really happening. They get compliance report, audit reports to see how the individual has not fared from a scoring standpoint, but how the test was taken, the sanctity of the process was maintained or not maintained. The second thing that also happened during this time was all these off-campus activities used to happen in the premises of the organizations also could not happen.
Right.
So which means you didn't have footfalls of 300, 400 coming to your office to do these assessments. So you had to do it remote.
Correct.
And the interesting part was, initially what looked like there's going to be a lull, the hiring picked up significantly because there was a lot of spurt of growth of, I would say, online organizations, anything that was, was...
no geographical boundaries.
Precisely.
No,
so all those solutions, if you look at, these organizations wanted to really, hire badly. They wanted to hire really fast.
Right.
So there was a lot of pressure on hiring as well.
Right.
So, and that's precisely where
technology
this entire technology really came as a savior for the organization.
Correct.
I would say from a candidate standpoint, one of the big benefits that they got was that the ability to reach out to a candidate became much more easier.
Right.
So a lot of times in the past, either the candidate could not reach out to the organization, or the organization not really to go to the college because geographically they were far apart, or they would say my shortlisting ratios are not that great.
Right.
So they would always shortlist colleges. But this helped the organization to shortlist a candidate and not just shortlist a college.
Right.
So I would say this entire paradigm of in-campus became online hiring.
Right.
Second, I would say talent reach became much better.
Correct.
And also the pace at which the organizations were able to hire also got improved significantly.
Right.
So one of our large customers would typically hire around 20 to 30,000 candidates. They used to take around, say, 10 months to do this process.
Right.
They were able to do it in around 12 to 15 weeks. Because you're able to...
That's a significant reduction.
Yeah, precisely. Instead of you now going college-wise, now you kind of cluster these colleges. So you're able to kind of cover 10 to 15 colleges on a single day.
Right.
So your ability to kind of hire talent, the turnaround time, everything kind of went through a thing. And also how to utilize your panels. Since you had travel cost, you'd probably not take a batch of 5-10 panelists.
Right.
Now you could kind of leverage a larger set of panelists within the organizations.
True.
You don't block the entire day. You can just block
bias
half
decreases.
a day. Yeah, so many of,
Correct.
I mean, so I would say this entire COVID has actually truly changed the paradigm of how this college hiring was happening. And I would say that was a really big game changer for a lot of these organizations.
Sure. You pretty much answered this earlier, but there was a clear shift from the physical recruitment space to the online recruitment space. And HirePro happened to be in the game already. But how did HirePro navigate this unforeseen circumstance? Like the pandemic happened, everyone went online. So how did HirePro do it differently?
Sure. I mean, I would say if you look at this entire, since we were in this business, for the last 20-25 years, we already had built a lot of automation to run the process for a lot of our clients.
Okay.
So if you look at our college hiring team, which was a team of close to almost 60 to 100 people, you have to manage the schedules of close to 100 customers, dates, venues. So we already had a platform, which was our own internal ERP to run this hiring for our clients.
Right.
Of course, these events used to happen physically.
Correct.
So I would say the basic infrastructure of a platform to run college hiring already existed with us.
Correct.
Now, over a period of in fact, 2-3 years before COVID, so in 2017, 2018, we'd already kind of remodeled this platform so that our clients could use it at least from a workflow standpoint to get the registrations done. Even if the assessments happen in the campus, you at least have one central place where all your data exists.
Right.
You can look at your ratios, efficiencies, which colleges have performed well. You could also look at how well your panels have performed in terms of shortlisting. And then you have a track of who interviewed, what really happened, and so on and so forth. So the platform was very much in shape. But what we really saw was adoption was a little poor. Because when in the campus, managers would feel very comfortable to kind of give feedback on the resume and paper and kind of do it. But then when COVID happened, so I would say it really did not take us too much of time to kind of just open up the platform.
Adapt.
And in fact, some of these customers were very surprised because they had logins which they never used, and when they logged in, they saw all the previous year's data as well.
Right.
So
then they realized the potential.
Yes, precisely. So I would say that the platform always existed, the solutions existed, the adoption became much better.
Correct.
And after that, we had a good number of new customers that we onboarded because they always were using an assessment player and not really a college hiring workflow.
Right.
And I think now, if in fact, when we get to talk to new customers or whenever we see an RFP, so the organizations clearly call out saying that I'm looking at the overall hiring automation rather than just an assessment.
Right.
Because there are so many nuances of how do you kind of reuse this talent over the years?
Correct.
I mean, people whom you have met in campus, how do you manage them 1 year down the line, 2 years down the line, and so on and so forth. So now organizations are kind of leveraging the entire talent pool and utilize that. And that's how I would say it was a win-win for us as an organization and also for the customers to kind of manage this.
Sure. So could you highlight some of the key tools and technologies that have become extremely critical when it comes to the recruitment process, especially from a college hiring standpoint?
So if you look at, I mean, traditionally as well, and even in the current phase, so the candidate by and large decides which organization to appear basis certain parameters which they collect. I would say the most prominent one is the compensation that the company is offering. Then second about the brand, then the kind of work location, and so on and so forth. So in colleges, when it was to be physical activities, people would walk into a pre-placement talk once they have decided to appear for this company. Of course, there will be a certain population who will come in, see the pre-placement talk and then make their mind and go away. But the minimum criteria to get into people to come for the pre-placement talk was where some of these parameters have already been assessed by the individual and basis which they take this call.
Correct.
Otherwise, they will go to some of the pre-placement talk and kind of attend. Now, which essentially means that branding was a key role that played in figuring out how we are able to attract the candidates. Now, with this entire process being online, now there are two things that organizations have got: their ability to kind of reach out to the larger community of candidates.
Right.
Because you can have, a website of
Any
sorts.
number.
You create a microsite. You send out your message.
Correct.
Where your ability to reach out to people is much
Right.
better. Some of the organizations also run some kind of hackathons on our platform in the third year or so,
Right.
where at that time the job is not really on the mind of the candidate,
Right.
and they just want to kind of explore this as an opportunity for a contest or
And to prove
get an
themselves.
internship program, or sometimes prizes which really
Right.
would attract them.
Right.
So your ability to kind of attract the talent pool is very, very important.
Correct.
So I would say that's one significant area today that organizations are looking for, because at the end of the day, your hiring is as good as the population you're able to get to assess.
True.
Second, obviously, the specialized assessments. Now, assessments again has 2-3 parts. One is the content for the assessment and the sanctity of the process.
Right.
So organizations are very, very particular about some very specific assessments when they do very specialized hiring. Because today there are organizations which are offering like 40-50 lakhs in campus.
Right.
So they really want to ensure that they're able to get the best of the talent.
Correct.
And they would want to kind of stack rank people when they are shortlisting them.
Right.
Then obviously they want to ensure that there's no kind of a practice or a malpractice attempt that has happened.
Correct.
While the tests are being conducted. The third element that organizations also look for is their ability to kind of interview quickly, move the process, and also very seamless for the candidate to submit their documents.
Right.
Or if you look at the hiring manager, and at one place they're able to see the overall resume of the candidate, the
Right.
performance in their assessments.
Right.
And as the candidate is talking, they can ask them to write a piece of code. So they are able to kind of see the person
on the go. And
then
very
they're able to
seamless.
do it, and meanwhile they can chat with the recruiter and say, hey, I think
Right.
this person looks good, I'm putting it now for the second
Next
round.
Correct.
And the
Correct.
HR round can happen, and so on.
Right.
So where
Right.
there's not too much of, I would say, physical movement.
No lag.
No
There's
lag.
absolutely no lag.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also, for example, let's assume there's one interviewer sitting in Pune and the second interviewer happens to be in Delhi.
Right.
I mean, in the past,
You
would not
couldn't.
have really be able to do it,
Right.
but now you can
Right.
seamlessly do all of these things. And in
Correct.
some of the organizations where they do international hiring, it
Right.
becomes very seamless for them to do the first round in India and ask their counterparts abroad to kind of log into the same
Right.
platform and kind of do this.
Seamlessly take over the next stage.
Precisely.
Right.
Then, from the time of hiring till the candidate comes on board is a good 7 to 8 months kind of a time frame.
Correct.
Where you need to engage with the candidate. Candidate also needs a lot of queries they need to
Right.
have in terms of
Answered.
when do I join, which batch should I be there. And some of them also, organizations are using this time period to train them.
Right.
Or just to kind of engage with them.
Correct.
So that's where the elements of branding, assessments, the entire interviewing offer process,
Right.
and onboarding. So these are some of the key essential elements that are required because this hiring starts off. The planning starts in March, April,
Right.
May,
Right.
and you get the candidates by July. So
July.
technically
Correct.
speaking, it's a 14 to 16 months kind of an activity to get one batch onboarded.
Right.
So
Right,
now,
right.
so to
So you need the tools and you need the seamless technology through all those 14
precisely
months. Right.
because for all the responsibility also would have changed hands during this time frame.
Correct.
And so how do you know that the person with whom you engage is actually the person who's joining?
Correct.
So that's where this entire
repository
yes.
comes.
So that's how it really
Right.
helps with the organizations.
Sure. So going forward, where do you envision college hiring headed? Do you think it's going to go back to physical? It will continue to be virtual, or do you think there'll be a mix and people would go back a little bit to the physical and make it a digital event?
Yeah, actually, in 2021, when the hiring was still by and large, I would say remote,
Virtual,
online, whatever you might call it. So everybody was wanting to predict how it's going to be in 2022 and
Right.
2023 and beyond. Obviously, there were two sets of things. One saying that no, I think everybody will go
It's going
physical,
to be,
and the other one was to say that no, I think everybody will now continue to be
virtually,
remote.
right.
But then, as usual, whatever happened or is probably happening and would be happening will be something in between.
Okay.
So if you look at today, there are two, I would say, categories of organizations.
Right.
who would still prefer, in-person, face-to-face, in the campus kind of a hiring.
Right.
One where you are hiring very, very high-end talent, typically in the premier campuses.
Institutions.
One also is that you get a window of say 7 to 8 hours
Right.
where you get the candidates, you quickly need to take decisions. It's a little high stakes
Right.
because of the compensation, the tier of talent
Correct.
that you want to really bring in, and so
Right.
on and so forth. So as a result, organizations feel that and very comfortable if they are present in person. Then their ability to kind of move fast, take decisions,
Right.
and also for the candidate to get a feel, and so all those kind of elements that is there.
Right.
Now the other extreme category would be where organizations find that their brand still has to be built in the campus. So sometimes they might have to kind of little bit of hustling, pushing the candidates, working with the placement officers.
Right.
So being present physically would really help.
Okay.
So I think these are the two extreme ends where I see organizations want to still at least do parts of their hiring in campus.
Okay.
At least they would want to do the pre-placement talk.
Right.
The assessments can happen remote. The interviews would still happen in person.
Right.
So it's a mix and match of these things that we see. Because obviously it's no brainer. The amount of cost that you incur in people going traveling, doing the assessments and all, it really doesn't make sense.
Right.
And for a large majority of them, they actually find this online hiring to be much more efficient for them.
Right.
Because the hiring manager is able to operate from a very comfortable work environment.
Correct.
For the candidate as well, they have more predictability because the platform allows them to choose which slot I would want to do. Because otherwise, in a typical college hiring, everybody's called at 9 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, the interviews are going to start.
And you could miss out, right? If there's two companies you're interested in at the same time, you could very well miss out.
Not only that, you miss out on your lunch and everything.
Exactly.
You don't know when you'll be called for an interview. But now there's more predictability. You got a slot. This is where your interview will start off.
Right.
So the automation that way has definitely helped.
Correct.
Not just the clients, but also the candidate community.
So largely going forward, it's going to be phygital.
It is going to be phygital.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
precisely.
Sure. Going forward, do you think companies will also have to change their strategies in order to attract better talent? Now that the world is getting phygital, what kind of strategies would they really need to look at to attract better talent?
So if you look at organizations are looking at 2-3 elements. So one is their ability to attract talent, and second is, I think, if they can get talent of a slightly different kind from these colleges as well.
Right.
Because see, what is really happening is in a lot of times you really do not get the candidate with exactly the skill that you need when they start off their work.
Right.
So in those scenarios, organizations are looking for, if I can hire from, say, a person who has graduated, gone through a finishing school, so that the absorption of the talent is much better.
Right.
Because today the hiring manager feels that, okay, I've onboarded the person, so in the month of July, August, I take roughly almost 3 to 4 months.
Right.
I pay salaries, my cost is more, the person is not really productive. And it takes a good amount of time and so on and so forth. So if I could get people who at least got trained in some of the core skills, this could happen either during their education or post their education. So that's something that is very, very, I would say, lucrative, attractive, both for the hiring manager as well as for the organization overall.
Right.
Second, we see that possibly the academic curriculum in some of these colleges might also go through some changes over the years with this new education policy that is going to come in.
Right.
Where probably a person will probably, instead of studying for a semester, go out, work somewhere, gather that experience, and then come back to work.
Right.
So I think that way the entire college hiring scenario is going to be fairly exciting.
Sure.
Not just from the fact that organizations are going to fine-tune their hiring strategies and methodologies.
Right.
But hopefully the entire academic world is also going to go through that change.
Correct.
And then of course you start off also figuring out some of the talent, because just as an example, over the last few years, some of the large IT services companies so they used to go for engineering talent, then they started going for the undergrad, and now they are also going for the ITI
Correct.
kind of folks, diploma holders and
Right.
so on,
Right.
based on the job family that is really
Correct.
that they are really going to hire.
Right.
Because
Right.
previously it was very clear, whatever is the work job family, you hire a certain kind of talent.
Correct.
But
Correct.
now
Correct.
they are also trying to figure out whether they can go for alternate talent
Right.
pools to kind of attract candidates. Maybe
can skills compensate for qualifications?
exactly, and maybe then in some of these job roles, it might so happen that today college hiring essentially means that hiring somebody who's a 25-year-old
Right.
person. Now it could be a scenario where probably in the next few years, for certain job families, you hire somebody who's never worked but probably is in the age of 35, 40 or so, and
Right.
if you're able to get them the right skills.
Correct.
I think you can really hire them as a fresher. A fresher need not always be a young person. It could be a person who doesn't have prior experience of doing that.
Right.
So, because there's the entire thing of, somebody would have started their career doing something, but now they really want to go through a paradigm shift.
And yes.
And that's where if some of these finishing schools are able to kind of skill them appropriately, these kind of changes could also happen. So,
True.
part-time workers,
women returning to the workforce.
yes, women returning to workforce. Yes, I mean that's
if
anyway.
They are changing their industry or
precisely. So that's we have seen happening not just with women returning, but I have seen it in general as well now.
Right.
Because I mean probably our parents used to work in a single organization. Our generation worked across multiple organizations. I think the future generation will have multiple careers within their entire span of 30, 40 years of
working
work.
years.
Yeah. So because what they studied, what they do in their first 5-10 years, and what they'll do in the next 5-10 years, all are going to be very, very different. And so that's how I would say that the work is evolving, the talent is evolving, and as a result, organizations will also try to kind of
evolve accordingly.
Yeah, accommodated to that.
So over the years, we've seen technology is completely reshaping the scenario, right? So how do you foresee college graduates adopting to these technological changes when it comes to their college hiring?
Today, if you look at, there are certain topics for individuals which are covered as core. For example, everybody studied basic science, maths, and so on. I think going forward, at least knowing one programming language and technology is, and it's already there. I mean, now because
kids are studying coding.
Kids are studying coding. People who are supposedly non-tech roles, but they still know the basic, coding because they can build their own self, so they can build some automation by themselves. And so on. So it's like driving a car, swimming. You should be knowing how to at least write some basic code.
Basic skills, like this have become basic.
This is going to be like basic skills that are there. So we see that technology as a skill, or a tech as a skill, or at least coding, or at least understanding and appreciating technology is going to be one of the core skills across any job family that is really going to be there. I mean, just like today, irrespective of a job, everybody knows how to operate a laptop or their phone. Similarly, I think people will at least be able to appreciate technology to a certain extent, and plus do something on top of it. So, and I'm sure even the technology around building some of this software is also becoming simpler and easier. So that's the reason where we see that, more and more people will kind of adopt to some of these, technologies that are there.
So candidates would largely need to go beyond their syllabus and pick up these skills, whether they study them or not. They have to know them. They have to, going forward, it becomes a must.
No, it's absolutely, because today anyway in all the engineering, at least in the engineering colleges, you'll find that the first year everybody studies basic coding irrespective of the department. And then obviously it depends on their interest level. I would say similarly for even in B schools now, when people are now trying to study, say, analytics, when they are taught, they are now being either taught or they are or organizations expect them to at least know some basic programming so that they can write their own piece of code, so that they can do some data crunching and some analytics. So it's now going to be part of I would say the mainstream course,
general skills
general skill that is really going to be there.
So speaking of different sectors, you could have finance, you could have technology, you could have manufacturing. Now each of these sectors have their own unique dimensions. So how does that affect hiring? Do you think sector-wise it's different for college hiring?
Yeah, so I mean, traditionally, every sector used to go to a certain set of colleges for hiring. For example, a factory would typically go for an ITI diploma kind of talent pool.
Right.
A tech would typically go for engineering colleges.
IITs.
Finance
Right.
would either go for an undergraduate program or go to a B school
MBA.
for hiring
Correct.
some of
Correct.
these things. But today, if you look at, let's take a bank. Now, today, a
Right.
bank actually hires from a B school for some of their core banking roles.
Right.
They would go to a tier 3 B school for hiring for some of their operations kind of roles,
Right.
sales and other things. They go to premier engineering college where
Right.
they would go and hire talent which is helping them from an automation need standpoint.
Right.
And plus they will kind of go for the large talent pool which is like a feet on street sales where they will go and
Correct.
hire undergrad students and so on and so forth.
Right.
So similarly, if you look at a lot of these manufacturing organizations as well, apart from an ITI diploma, they would look at some people with say, and based on some of these job roles, it's also
Correct.
dependent on if it's a GCC, some of the roles that have transitioned to India,
Right.
or in some of these organizations now they look for some very specific specialized roles. So obviously, the scope of colleges that were there, that talent pool is definitely, I would say, increasing based on some of the
sectors,
changes in the job family that is happening within the sector.
Right.
Like, I mean, of course, if you look at tech, when tech hires across.
Correct.
I mean, the classic example is if you take a e-commerce company
Right.
in India, they would go and hire from a tier 1 engineering college, then they will hire from a tier 2 engineering college, then they hire from a tier 1 B school, then they will hire
Right.
from tier 2 B school. They will go and hire a blue collar workforce,
Correct.
which is largely not campus but from the
Right.
external market, because you have everything from your data analytics, core
Correct.
engineering,
Correct.
to your internal IT,
And
to your
supply
business,
chain.
supply
Right.
chain, operations,
Correct.
warehouse,
Right.
and the last mile delivery as well.
Correct.
So if you're looking at an entry level talent,
Yeah.
the spectrum is
Very
really,
wide.
really across.
Yes, correct.
And the fact that a lot of the old economy is now getting digitized is where you see organizations
This
coming
change
in
happening.
and hiring most of the engineering talent. Whereas otherwise it was largely their core area where they would have been hiring.
Right.
So that's the shift I would say is happening,
Right.
where the sectors
Across
are going
sectors.
beyond the set of colleges that they would be hiring.
Right. Right. So, lastly, do you see any upcoming trends in 2024 that are different from what you've seen in 23? And how's that going to shape up? How's the next year going to look like?
So actually, more than the trend, if you look at, unfortunately, 2023, I would say was not really a good year from a college hiring standpoint.
Okay.
I mean, from a reference, what I'm talking about when I say 2023 is people who will be graduating in 2024.
Right.
2020, that way 2022 was also not so, I mean, some
Lucrative.
pockets, yeah, it was there, but
Right.
2023 has really kind of bore the brunt of the entire college hiring.
Right.
And this would say across the tiers of colleges. So hopefully some of these organizations would have their demands coming up, say in April, May time
Right.
frame,
Right.
and probably things go better. So we see that this possibly could kind of, this deficit could be compensated with the same talent pool being hired from an off-campus kind of a
Sure.
model.
Okay.
Now, the moment you get into the off-campus model, then it opens up multiple kinds of options
Possibilities.
where you would look at pre-trained talent.
Right.
So, in fact, if you ask me, the students who are currently not getting placed right now because organizations are not hiring, I think the best bet is either go
Skill
for
up
higher studies,
right.
because then probably the next couple of years things would kind
Correct.
of evolve.
Correct.
Or even if you're really not going in for a formal education, at least upskill yourself.
Yes.
Because the other challenge that the organizations will face is that I'm not really hired in 2023. So when I need talent between April of 2024
Right.
till 2025,
Right.
I have to rely on this talent.
Correct.
Now, the better qualified the talent, the faster the absorption.
Correct.
So that's one thing we see that, probably a lot of these finishing schools might see upsurge in terms of enrollments, their
Right.
placements
Correct.
will really be better.
Right.
And, and that kind of possibly changes this trend, because organizations over a period of time would say, okay, if I was hiring 100% from colleges,
Right.
maybe I'll do 10 to 15% from these finishing schools going forward.
Right.
And that could possibly kind of do some kind of a
Correct.
shift.
Right.
Because everybody's been wanting to do this, but then this could kind of give kind of thrust there. So
right.
that's one trend that I see possibly could happen.
Right.
I mean, we just hope that 2024 is a good year for college hiring.
Correct.
Because these students would have kind of invested their entire 4 years, 2 years.
True. Plus the effort that they will invest in upskilling.
So, yes, absolutely. So yeah, but hopefully I think 2024 college hiring numbers would definitely be better than 2023 numbers that would be there.
Sure.
So yeah, let's hope for the best.
With this, thank you very much for being so patient, answering all our questions with regards to college hiring. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dilshad.
Thanks for being there.
Thank you.
And to all our listeners out there, stay tuned, like and subscribe the HirePro podcast Momentum to learn about all things with regards to fearless hiring.